Hi guys, Deanne here from Canada Abroad, and thank you so much for tuning in. So today we are going to be going over some of the major changes that happened in 2024, as well as what you can expect from IRCC in 2025. So the first thing that we are going to be starting with is, of course, international students. We saw so many different changes for international students this year that a lot of people are still unsure of what all the different requirements or changes have been. So we started off the beginning of 2024 with a major announcement that there would be a cap on the number of approved study permits for 2024, as well as that those applying for study permits would require an additional authorization letter from the province in which they were studying. Now, what IRCC announced for the reduction of study permits was that they were going to be approving 35% less study permits than they had previously. So that is going to feed into 2025 as well. They are trying to reduce the number of temporary immigrants in Canada. So temporary residents, work permit holders, and study permits. But of course, they were starting with the study permit holders in 2024. Next, we saw changes with the amount of hours that students could work off campus. We had seen previously that had been increased from 20 hours up to 40 hours per week. But of course, that's not sustainable for most full-time students. They can't be full-time students and full-time workers. So IRCC has now made it that full-time students can work off campus up to 24 hours per week when school is in session, but they can still work full-time during school breaks and holidays. Another major change that happened for international students is the new requirement that if you are going to change your designated learning institution, you now need to apply for a new study permit. So it's no longer the case that you can simply log in to the online portal and notify them of the change of your institution. You now have to apply for a whole new study permit. Following on the changes for students is the changes to the postgraduate work permit program. Now, the first change, which I don't think is a bad one, realistically, is the language component. So international graduates now have to produce an approved language test to show that their language proficiency is high enough based on the program in which they studied. So for those who obtained a bachelor's degree or a master's or a PhD from a university, they need to get a CLB level 7 on an approved English test or an NCLC level 7 on an approved French test. Those who graduated from a university program other than a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD also require the CLB level 7 or NCL level 7 in French. Now, for those who completed a program through a college, they have to achieve a CLB level 5 in English or an NCLC level 5 in French. The second change to the postgraduate work permit is that some individuals, most notably those who did not do a bachelor's degree, a master's, or a PhD, so those who completed programs through colleges or other programs through universities, depending which program they studied, that will dictate if they're going to be eligible for postgraduate work permits. So this was implemented in November of 2024. So if you're going to be graduating in the future, you need to check now if your program is going to be eligible for the postgraduate work permit. What they have said is that if you did graduate from a college or one of the university programs where there is a field of study requirement, they are looking for those who studied in the fields of agriculture and agri-food, education, healthcare, STEM, transport, certain programs related to early childhood education, and developmental service workers. So very much in line with the targeting that we see currently with Express Entry. Now to talk about some changes that happened that were not related to international students. The first was the pause on the self-employed individual program. So not a lot of people had known or heard about this program. It was for people who were employed or self-employed in culture, arts, sports, and they had to have a certain amount of experience on an international stage. There was a lot involved with that. It wasn't, it didn't used to be widely used, but apparently it has now become widely used by people trying to get into Canada. So they put a pause on this program in April of 2024. The reason they did so was there is a 4-year backlog of applications. So if you do have an application in, it is going to take some time to get it processed. So as of April, they were not accepting new applications, and they said that it will remain paused. And they're going to also reevaluate the program to see if it needs to be updated or changed based on Canada's needs at the moment. So if you do have an application in and you submitted it before the deadline, it will be processed. But of course, there is quite a backlog at the moment. The next change that was not related to, maybe it is kind of related to international students, is the pause on private refugee sponsorship. So IRCC announced that they would not be accepting any privately sponsored refugees until further notice. There was a giant influx of refugee claims from international students in Canada whose permits were expiring. And from what you can read in the news, I don't know the truth, obviously. They're maybe not in need of protection and just using the system as a way to remain in Canada. So it'll remain to be seen what happens with that large quantity of applications that has come in. But that was the driving force behind the pause on those intakes. Now that we've somewhat recapped 2024, of course, we can't go through everything that happened. There was quite a bit, but those were the major things that we saw happening in 2024. Now we're going to look at what you can expect from IRCC in 2025. So the first thing for 2025 is that IRCC is again going to be reducing the number of approved study permits for 2025. So it's going to be reduced to 437,000 approved study permits for 2025. And this is down from 2024's quota, which was 485,000. The next thing that we can expect from 2025 is that there is going to be no points issued to those who have a job offer in the express entry system. So IRCC has said that they are going to be removing the additional points that applicants currently get for a job offer in the spring of 2025. Now, they have not confirmed if this is only for those who are getting the points through a labor market impact assessment, or if it also applies to those under international agreements that get the points after working in Canada for a year, and that employer is going to continue to employ them. So it remains to be seen the exact details of who is going to be eligible, or if it's just anyone with a job offer will no longer be able to claim points. We'll know more in the spring of 2025. IRCC will be welcoming less new permanent residents as well as temporary residents in 2025. The immigration minister reduced the immigration targets. So the target for 2025 was reduced from 500,000 new permanent residents down to 395,000 new permanent residents. They also, for the first time, put quotas on the temporary residents that they are going to be admitting to Canada. So they're hoping to reduce the temporary resident population in Canada by over 445,000 individuals in this year. So that could be people won't be able to renew their permits. There's obviously certain spouses of students that are no longer eligible for open work permits. Spouses of certain workers are no longer eligible. Obviously, there's a reduction in the approval rate for study permits. So all of this is going to go towards reducing that temporary resident population in Canada. Another important thing going forward is there's no more flagpoling for applicants who are trying to get a work or study permit, extension, or a postgraduate work permit. You have to apply online. So they've said that if you're in Canada and you're applying for an extension or a new permit, you should be doing that online, and there will be no more flagpoling and issuing of those permits at the border. For those who are the spouse of a student, a change that is going into effect is it used to be that if your spouse was studying a master's degree that you could get the open work permit to work in Canada while they're studying. They're going to change this that you can only be eligible for that open work permit if your spouse's master's program is at least 16 months in duration. If it's under that, then you will not be eligible for that open work permit. They also said that for the spouses of foreign workers, the open work permit will be only issued to those where the main applicant, so the foreign worker, is employed in a management occupation, professional occupation, or in sectors with labor shortages. They haven't given the exact list of occupations that they deem to be professional or in a shortage, but we will be getting that list in 2025, but that's something to look out for. And next is we should be seeing a change into the application of citizenship by descent. It currently is limited to the first generation born outside of Canada, but it looks like in 2025, we will see that expanded to the second generation born outside of Canada, but we have to wait for that legislation to pass and be formally announced, but you can look out for that in 2025. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. And on behalf of Canada Abroad, we want to wish you a very happy new year. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to all the latest immigration news and updates in 2025.